All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into Bitcoin price predictions, and some of these are seriously wild.
Wild is an understatement.
We've got insights from like Van Eck and a few other big names in finance,
hmm
and they're saying Bitcoin could hit $200,000 by 2025,
Yeah.
maybe even millions in the long run, millions.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me is the why behind those numbers.
Okay.
Like we're talking major shifts happening in global finance right now, new power players emerging. And, Bitcoin has these unique characteristics that make it a potential alternative to like everything we know.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole thing, starting with Van Eck.
Yeah.
They manage over $100 billion.
hmm
So they're not just some random Bitcoin enthusiasts, right?
Right. Their predictions carry weight.
Yeah.
And Matthew Siegel, their head of digital research, he's the one who put out this like $200,000 by 2025 prediction.
And he's tying that to a potential U.S. debt downgrade by Moody's.
Uh-huh.
So basically, if the U.S. dollar starts looking shaky, investors might flock to Bitcoin.
That's the idea. Yeah. Yeah, a safe haven asset is what people turn to when they lose faith in traditional systems.
Right.
Think of it like this. If you're worried about your local currency losing value, you might buy gold because it's seen as like stable and safe.
Yeah.
Siegel's suggesting Bitcoin could play that role, but like on a global scale.
Makes sense, but some people say Bitcoin is more like a tech stock than digital gold.
Right.
It's so volatile, the price goes up and down like crazy.
Okay. There's a huge debate about Bitcoin's short-term correlations with things like gold or the US dollar. It's unpredictable in the short term. But Siegel's argument is about the long game.
Because there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins.
Exactly. Currency debasement is when a government prints more money, making each individual unit worth less over time. Bitcoin's fixed supply, it's designed to be resistant to that.
So even if there are bumps along the way, its scarcity could make it more valuable over time.
That's the theory. And it's one reason why some analysts are so bullish, even with all the crazy ups and downs.
Okay, so we've got this potential U.S. debt downgrade possibly pushing investors towards Bitcoin. But Siegel also brought up another fascinating factor, the BRICS nations.
Right, these are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
And get this, they just added Argentina, the UAE, and Ethiopia to the mix.
That's right.
And those three new members are already mining Bitcoin with government resources. That's huge.
It's a huge signal that major economies are taking Bitcoin seriously.
Yeah.
But what's even more interesting is what Russia's been pushing for.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So they're working on building Bitcoin mining and AI infrastructure across all the BRICS nations,
Wow.
with the ultimate goal of settling global trade in Bitcoin.
So instead of using U.S. dollars for international deals, they'd use Bitcoin.
That's the vision.
That's a pretty bold move.
It really highlights the urgency outside the U.S. to find alternatives to the dollar, especially with concerns about U.S. fiscal policy. Imagine a world where global trade isn't reliant on a single currency controlled by one country.
Right.
That's the potential shift we're talking about.
Right. Wow. Okay, that's a lot to process. So we've got the NEC predicting $200,000 and the BRICS nations potentially shaking up the global financial system with Bitcoin.
Uh-huh.
What else is driving these huge predictions?
Oh, we can't forget about Wall Street BlackRock. The world's largest asset manager just put over $1 billion into a Bitcoin ETF.
Okay, hold on. ELI5 on ETF for anyone listening who's new to this whole world.
Sure thing. An ETF or exchange-traded fund lets you invest in a basket of assets like stocks, bonds, or in this case, Bitcoin, without buying each one individually.
Okay.
It's kind of like a mutual fund that trades on the stock market.
So BlackRock creating a Bitcoin ETF means even more mainstream investors can get exposure to Bitcoin.
Exactly. And James Heckman, this guy who keeps a really close eye on Wall Street, says this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow.
He claims BlackRock wouldn't touch Bitcoin unless they expected like a 20x return.
Okay, do the math for me 20 times.
$1.2 million per Bitcoin. It's definitely a bold prediction, but it shows how some experts are thinking they believe Bitcoin's value is tied to its potential to like disrupt the entire financial system, and they're betting big on that.
So we've got Van Eck at $200,000, Heckman saying it could go as high as $1.2 million. Are there any other price targets on the table?
Yeah, well, there's Kathy Wood. She's another big name in investing.
Ah.
She predicted Bitcoin hitting $500,000, although she hasn't said exactly when she thinks it'll happen.
I feel like I'm in a bidding war where the prize is a digital currency.
Right.
And wasn't there some even longer-term prediction from Van Eck?
You have good memory. They actually have a model predicting Bitcoin will become a global reserve asset by 2050, potentially reaching $3 million.
Okay, from thousands to millions, my head's spinning. But all these predictions seem to be pointing in the same direction up.
Yeah, what's fascinating is they're not just based on hype, they're based on real trends. The potential U.S. debt downgrading, the BRICS nations adopting Bitcoin, Wall Street getting involved, and the fact that Bitcoin's supply is limited while governments just keep printing more of their own currencies.
So it's like a perfect storm brewing in the world of finance, and Bitcoin is right in the center of it.
That's a great way to put it. It's a fascinating time to be watching this all unfold. What really stands out to you from all this? What's caught your attention the most?
Honestly, the BRICS angle is blowing my mind. The idea that we could see a shift away from the US dollar as the dominant currency, that's a huge deal.
I agree. It's a reminder that the world is constantly changing and that new power structures are emerging.
It makes you wonder what the world will look like in 10, 20, 30 years if these trends continue.
That's a great question to ponder. And in part 2 of this deep dive, we're going to look at the potential risks and challenges that could stand in the way of these predictions coming true.
Right, because there are always two sides to every coin, even a digital one. So stay tuned, folks, because this deep dive is just getting started. Okay, so we've been talking about these crazy Bitcoin pref predictions.
Crazy is right.
$200,000, $1 million, even $3 million.
Yeah.
But I think it's time for a reality check.
Yeah,
Are there any reasons to be skeptical about all this hype?
absolutely. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in all the excitement, but, Bitcoin, it's still a young asset. It's not without risks.
Besides the obvious one that it could crash and burn, what are we talking about here? What are the risks?
Well, one of the big ones is regulation.
Okay.
Governments are still figuring out how to handle Bitcoin.
Right.
And if they decide to, crack down on it, that could definitely impact the price.
Right. We saw that happen with China a few years ago.
Exactly. They basically banned crypto and the market went haywire.
Yeah.
And then there's the risk of security breaches. Blockchain technology is generally considered very secure,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not foolproof.
So theoretically, someone could hack into the system and steal Bitcoin.
It's possible, although it's important to remember that the blockchain itself has never been successfully hacked.
Okay.
The vulnerabilities tend to be with the exchanges or wallets where people actually store their Bitcoin.
Gotcha. So it's important to choose a reputable and secure platform if you're going to invest in crypto.
Absolutely.
What else should people be aware of?
Well, the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining is a major concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've heard about.
The process of creating new Bitcoins requires a ton of energy, which can have a significant carbon footprint.
It seems kind of ironic that something digital could be so bad for the environment.
Yeah, it's definitely a valid concern.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the crypto industry is aware of this, and they're actively working on solutions.
Like what?
Well, some developers are exploring more energy-efficient mining methods,
Okay.
and there's a growing movement towards green cryptocurrencies that use less energy.
Interesting. So maybe there's hope for a more sustainable future for Bitcoin.
It's certainly a possibility. It'll be interesting to see how the technology evolves to address these challenges.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about what all this means for the average person listening to this.
Yeah.
Should we all be running out to buy Bitcoin right now?
That's a personal decision.
Yeah.
It really depends on your individual financial situation and your risk tolerance.
Right, because $1 million Bitcoin sounds great, but I'd be terrified to put all my money into something so volatile.
Diversification is always a good strategy. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially with something as unpredictable as crypto.
For sure, but let's say someone's curious about dipping their toes into the crypto waters. What advice would you give them?
First and foremost, do your research.
Okay.
Don't just blindly follow the hype. Understand what Bitcoin is, how it works, what the risks are.
Don't invest more than you can afford to lose, right?
Exactly. And remember, this is a long game. Don't expect to get rich quick. Crypto markets can be incredibly volatile, so patience is key.
Any other tips for navigating this crazy world?
Choose a reputable exchange and a secure wallet for storing your crypto.
Right.
There are a lot of scams out there, so be careful who you trust.
That's a good point. You don't want to end up losing all your Bitcoin to some shady online scheme.
No, you don't. And finally, remember that the best investment decisions are informed decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let fear or greed cloud your judgment.
So basically, the same rules apply to crypto as to any other investment. Do your research, diversify, and be patient.
Exactly. Those principles never go out of style.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks and rewards, but there's another aspect to this that I find fascinating.
Yeah.
What are the broader implications of Bitcoin's potential rise?
Oh, that's where things get really interesting.
I mean, if it really does become this global force, what does that mean for the world?
If Bitcoin reaches even a fraction of some of these price predictions, It could fundamentally change the global financial system as we know it.
Like it could actually challenge the dominance of the US dollar.
It's not outside the realm of possibility. We've already talked about the BRICS nations exploring alternatives to the dollar.
Right.
And Bitcoin's decentralized nature makes it a very attractive option.
And we've already seen countries like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as legal tender.
Right now, El Salvador is a small country, and their experiment has had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
But it's a sign that governments are starting to take Bitcoin seriously.
So it's not just about making money from Bitcoin, it's about the potential for a complete shift in how we think about money and finance.
Exactly. It's a paradigm shift that could have far-reaching consequences for global trade, monetary policy, even geopolitical power dynamics.
Wow. That's pretty mind-blowing to think about, and it all stems from this digital currency that was created just a little over a decade ago.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of technology and how quickly innovation can disrupt established systems.
So even if those million-dollar predictions don't pan out, it seems like Bitcoin is already making waves.
Without a doubt, it's a force to be reckoned with, and its story is far from over.
You know, listening to all this makes me wonder about your personal take.
Mm-hmm.
You've clearly spent a lot of time researching Bitcoin. Do you see it as like a revolutionary force for good or a speculative bubble that's going to burst or something in between?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
I think Bitcoin represents a fascinating intersection of technology, finance, and social change. It has the potential to disrupt traditional systems and empower individuals in ways we've never seen before.
Okay.
But it also comes with risks and challenges that we can't ignore.
So you're saying it's not a black and white issue?
Exactly. It's a complex and evolving phenomena that requires careful consideration and critical thinking.
And ultimately, each individual needs to decide for themselves what role, if any, Bitcoin will play in their lives and their financial strategies.
Precisely. It's a journey of exploration and discovery, and I encourage everyone to approach it with an open mind and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from wild price predictions to the potential impact on the global financial system. But as we wrap up part two, I'm curious. Out of all the predictions and possibilities we've discussed, what's the one thing you really want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is to approach Bitcoin and the whole crypto world with curiosity, but also a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't just buy into the hype or let fear drive your decisions.
So do your research understand the technology, weigh the risks and rewards, and then decide if Bitcoin has a place in your financial future?
Exactly. And remember, this is just the beginning. The story of Bitcoin and how it's going to impact the world, it's still unfolding. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
You know, it's funny to think that one day we might look back at these predictions and either laugh at how low they were or be amazed at how far off the mark they turned out to be.
That's the beauty of it. The future is uncertain, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Well said. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I know I've learned a ton, and I'm sure our listener has too.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations.
And to our listener, we encourage you to keep exploring Bitcoin and the world of cryptocurrencies. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to navigate this exciting and rapidly changing landscape.
Who knows, maybe you'll even come up with your own Bitcoin price prediction.
Just be sure to let us know if you do. And with that, we'll wrap up this geek dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration.